Hello and welcome to episode number 244 of the ETPHD team podcast with myself. I'm Becca. Hi Becca, how are you?
I am great, thank you. How are you?
I am also great, thank you. And Anna, how are you?
I am good, thank you. All good.
Fabulous. Anybody got anything wild happening this week?
Wild. Wild. The only thing that's really wild happening for me today is it's snowing because I burnt my scalp while I was away. I was so good with like Factor and my scalp burnt, and now it's like I have the worst dandruff known to man. So I'm gonna have to wear a hat next week.
Scalp burn is not the one. I thought
It's
that one
like
was 50.
snowing.
Oh
I
yeah.
know it's interesting, but like it's a problem, guys, today.
Yeah, that's not great.
I
Well,
mean, for next time, Becca, sorry, Amelia, for next time, I will share with you a spray SPF for scalp and hairline. And honestly, it was a game changer in Italy because I get it. You know, when you tie your hair up,
mhm.
if I'm like out in the day, I'll suddenly tie my hair up and I won't have done right up to my hairline because if I'll have put SPF on with my hair down. And honestly, it made such a difference. It was great.
Oh, I did not know that product existed. It's making my head itch. I'm literally scratching my head, even obviously just even thinking about it. I am like an insistent hat wearer these days. I'm just like, no, just cover it all up. I got a burnt head when I was like 15, and it's the first holiday I'd gone on without my parents, and I was like, gonna wear a nice bikini. I'm not gonna wear a hat, and I'm gonna like make my hair all nice. Got scalp burn and got sunstroke. It's like, congrats to me. Never again.
I think I've
Okay. Did you see? I just saw a TikTok from someone this morning that it was on Daily Mail that a vegan influencer died of starvation.
Yeah.
I haven't read the full article. Did she die from like a prolonged calorie deficit, or did she die from malnourishment because of?
They've not said, like, apparently her mum, don't know who I think I am, obviously read the article and it says mother. Her mum saying there was some kind of infection. Her friends are saying she became increasingly emaciated and malnourished. And apparently kind of when she started this health, so I think initially it was kind of health thing, she was still kind of eating fats and protein and then moved to solely fruits and vegetables, and became increasingly more restrictive.
That's so sad. It's so sad because that's the type of that's an eating disorder, right? And it's sad that it doesn't get recognized as that, and even the way that it's kind of talked about from the snapshot of a vegan influencer dies because of this, and it's like, no, she ultimately likely had an eating disorder, and we obviously don't know the ins and outs, and that's it's awful. I've been having a conversation with somebody that I mentor recently, and this morning we were chatting about this because there's a coach who she had worked with for a while, and she had no period for years, and the coach just ignored it. And when she started working with me, like, we're very at ETPHD, we never will kind of assume that another coach has done something wrong ever, even if someone says to us, oh, my old coach had me on 500 calories and all of these things. We're always very mindful of, it's not really our job to look at what other coaches are doing, particularly when we focus on, supporting someone. But then she was saying that, she's just now picked up a client who also worked with this old coach and also was in a similar sort of situation and was on no calories, no period. And it's just, and I said, is it a bodybuilding coach? And it's not. It's a coach who advertises to support women get leaner, stronger, and I imagine happier, because always come together. And it's so, she was talking about like how frustrating it is, and it's hard because I definitely in the past would have looked at these things and got really pissed off and really like, this is so frustrating, this is what's happening in our industry and causing all of these problems for so many people. And now it's like, you just have to pick your battles, right? And you can't lose so much energy on all of these things, but it's so hard to decipher online who to trust when this person, she's got her and her partner both coach, she's, she looks quote unquote healthy, whatever that is. She just says, get leaner, stronger. No, nothing looks, you know, overly dieted. It's not talking about bodybuilding. And yet here we are still with people losing their periods, struggling with binge eating, all of these things. And it's like, you're supposed to be, you're want like a successful, quote unquote, healthy fat loss coach. And that still goes on. And it's so easy to bash bodybuilding. And we don't particularly bash bodybuilding. We're just very honest about, you know, the ins and outs of it, right? But no one ever really talks about the people, the coaches who are maybe lacking some education. And I'm sure they're not doing it intentionally, but are lacking some education, who it's not so obvious. It's obvious if it's a bodybuilding prep coach that things might happen to your period and whatever else. And that's not their priority. And they'll say that. And there are some great prep coaches out there, of course. But I was talking to my client about it this morning, because it's like, it's hard to know, right? It's hard to know whose advice to follow. It's just, apart from ours, obviously, because ours is always right.
Yeah, it's like lacking the education, but also lacking maybe their own healing, or they haven't gone through like or worked through the struggles that they've had. Because most of us are attracted to coaching and helping others in this area because of our own struggles, and it's just so important to have come through it. And yes, you can still have struggles, of course you can, but you need to also be in a place that you are able to support and not just transfer everything onto the people who you're working with. So hard. It's like, we know you're passionate, but also you could be damaging someone beyond like repair a lot of the time.
So much. I think we've had this conversation before, haven't we, about also like I think you can only support people to feel as good as you know exists, or you can only support people to get to a place with food that you know exists. And the only way you know it exists really is if you've at least worked to that point. And like you said, Becca, you can still have struggles, and we all still sometimes have struggles, but I think some of the mismessaging, especially in fitness, of like, oh well, for example, you need to track calories in order to eat intuitively, as an example. No, you needed to track calories for you to eat intuitively, but lots of people can eat intuitively, healthfully, honor their health with never tracking calories. But unless you've been through it, or you know the research solidly behind it, you'll never believe that people can get to that point. Or someone might say, you know, you'll never love the way your body looks, but you can be happy with it. And it's like, some people will love the way their body looks, and just because you haven't got to that point, which like is fine, and you might not get to that point, you need to know that it exists, right? So I definitely think there's an element of, like you said, Becca, like it's not even, sometimes it's like transference of your own stuff, but sometimes it's just, if you don't believe, if you can't let go of tracking without, you know, overeating, you might genuinely believe that that's just, tracking is the right way to go if you're overeating, because that's the right way for you. So I guess that is kind of transference. Okay, let's move on to the questions. Becca, do you want to go first?
Sure thing. So can you give any tips for someone who hasn't journaled before and who struggles to express their emotions? This is Denai's client. We looking at you, Anna?
No, it's like, no pressure. I mean, genuinely, it is just like biting the bullet and getting started with it, and removing any expectations on what you think journaling should look like or what you should be doing at that time, because that's going to, like, your journaling practice is probably going to change throughout the time that you journal. It needs to be what you need in that moment. And I think to get started, like with almost kind of any other habit, plan it into your day, set a timer just for a couple of minutes, and even if you only write a couple of words, that's fine. It's just getting into the habit of getting started. But I think in terms of kind of journaling on emotions, whip out your feelings wheel, sit with that, what comes up, write on that, even if it is just a list of kind of how you felt that day, and then maybe expanding on it and, okay, well, how did that feeling impact my actions for the rest of the day, or what happened that made me feel that way.
I think even just starting off quite functional can be helpful, because sometimes if you think, oh, I need to journal about my deepest, darkest fears, it can feel a lot. So sometimes it's, for people who have a big reservation to journaling, it could just be as simple as writing down like 3 things that went well today, 3 things that I might change for tomorrow, and what's my overarching goal for the week, something like that. Like really, really functional to start off with, just so that you build the habit of starting to build that self-awareness. And then once you're in that habit, then you can start maybe digging into like, okay, well, what does this feel like? What did this look like? What stories am I telling myself? And you can get into start digging a little bit deeper once you've built that habit. So I think sometimes the functional stuff, I do have on our website, there is in the education page, there are different sections of journaling prompts, but there is a set of journaling prompts for people who don't like journaling. So if that's you, then you can go in there, and there's also a podcast on journaling if you don't like journaling. So maybe listen to that as well. Anna, go for it.
Where do you even start with feeling your feelings? How do you be with them?
Where do you even start? It's a good question. I think, like what you said, Anna, the feelings wheel is really good to help you see, like, it's not just happy, sad, or fine. There's also a big range of others that you may not even have ever thought you felt before. So getting familiar with all the different emotions that are out there, and then getting familiar with how it actually feels to feel those ones. So how does it feel emotionally, but also how does it feel physically? What kind of sensations are in your body when that emotion comes up? What's your breathing like? All those kind of things can help you identify patterns. And then once you've identified patterns, you can, respond to it and manage it in a helpful way. And just naming it a lot of the time. So even just saying out loud, like, I feel angry, is a really good place to fart. Oh my God. The biggest pullover I've ever had. Yeah, that is a really good place to start, even just naming it. We know that brings a sense of relief in itself, and a sense of like processing. Stop laughing at me, Julia.
Okay, sorry. Great answer. I think too, I like the idea of like trying feelings on, as in sometimes when you're trying to feel your feelings, like, is it must be anger, or it must be happiness, or you go through like those kind of umbrella terms to start with, which is obviously why that granularity and that feelings wheel can be really, really helpful. But I think sometimes just trying things on in the sense of, could this be anger? Could this be resentment? Could this be envy? Could this be jealousy? And getting curious with it can be quite helpful. And then say, okay, yeah, what does it feel like to name this as anger? No, this doesn't quite feel right. Okay, what does it feel like to name this as resentment? Oh yeah, that slots into exactly that feels in my body, right? And when you name your feelings appropriately, you do get some slight regulation, which is incredible, just by correctly naming your emotions. And so can you get curious about that? What does that feel like? And do you notice any shift when you correctly name what you're feeling? And of course, there's no right or wrong answer. How you feel is how you feel, but there will be certain terms that sit with you. So that curiosity of just thinking, oh, could it be this? And do you know what? Like, I hate the kind of social media self-diagnosis trend at the moment. I really hate this kind of, oh, do you feel tired when you wake up in the morning? Oh, well, you must have ADHD. Like, I'm not quite sure that's how it works, but like, there is very much this trend of, I think I tick every box for every diagnosis on every TikTok that I've ever seen, right? So I don't love that, but I do think that a little bit of that can be quite helpful, just to start to get you to question yourself and question what comes up for you. So someone's like, oh, have you ever noticed that you're like maybe hyper independent and you have these behaviors, and that can be quite helpful just for you to go, I do have those things, not to self-diagnose, not to think that whatever they're talking about is you, but sometimes they bring to light some thoughts, some feelings, some behaviors that maybe you hadn't considered before. So, scrolling, we don't love a long scroll, but getting a bit curious about that, I think reading can be really helpful. There's a book called Emotional Agility by Susan David, where I think actually when I read that book was when we started implementing the feelings wheel. I think, and that's a really good book to read, just about getting to grips with your feelings a bit more and emotions.
Yeah. I notice as well when you have the pull to avoid, like to numb something or to escape, that's usually when you can kind of rewind a bit and retrace your step. Why can't I talk today? Retrace your steps to think, okay, I noticed that I had like an urge to escape. So what's that all about? And then to retrace and think what's happened, what could I be feeling, you know, at the moment, can be helpful as well to kind of retrack. But opening your body language to it too. People always say to me, how do I feel it? Like when people talk about feeling emotions, how do I actually feel it? And I find just like opening yourself up to it and almost accepting it in is a really helpful way, and just even visualizing it. Okay, I'm accepting that feeling of sadness. And how does it feel to accept that then me physically? And breathing through it, like taking a couple of breaths and actually just, yeah, physically sitting with it.
And yoga's great for that too, especially if you do like a lot of hip opening and stuff, and then you have like shavasana at the end where you literally are just sitting with whatever's kind of come out in your body. And I'm not talking about the scientific vigor of store your emotions in your body, blah blah blah. Like I'm not going to get into that conversation, but yoga can be a good space to let things, you know, sit and open yourself up to these types of feelings and emotions. Okay, Georgia's client. Just out of curiosity, since I know all of you are experts in things like this, and I won't be able to ask questions for a while because she's finished coaching, is there any sort of consensus right now on the effects of oral contraceptives on things like hypertrophy, strength gains, etc., when resistance training? No.
Nada.
Nada. I mean, I talk about this on EIQ Nutrition, which, by the way, is now open. If anybody wants to sign up for the next intake, you should. If you're a coach and you haven't done EIQ, then you are a fool. So early word is now open today. And it's the 3rd of August. Okay. In general, the research around oral contraceptives is so variable. And I mean, the research around menstrual hormones or reproductive hormones and training, etc., is super variable and low quality in general. And when it comes to oral contraceptives, that's no different. There was a meta-analysis that looked at this a couple of years ago and said that we have no, not no idea, but there is no specific direction for any sort of oral contraceptive in terms of does it help, does it hinder? Think about an example of somebody who really struggles with PMS. And they start taking an oral contraceptive to help manage their PMS and to manage their heavy periods. For them, they can now probably train during PMS and their period. So every month they're getting an extra week and a half of solid training. So for them, what do you imagine is going to happen, regardless of the actual exogenous hormones that they're consuming? They're probably going to be, they're increasing their training, good quality training by potentially 20-25%. over a year, 2 years. That's probably going to be really beneficial for hypertrophy and strength. But then for other people, that they might be on the oral contraceptive for actual contraceptive reasons, and they don't get the same impact, or there are some potential impacts of taking exogenous hormones, potentially. But these are so variable between individuals. So anyone that says, you know, you shouldn't take oral contraceptives because they impact your strength gains and stuff like that. I think I did a reel on this at one point because there was a girl on TikTok saying, oh, I just stopped taking the pill and look at my progress. And it was just like a transformation picture of her. And it's like, it was just ludicrous. And it's like, no, you probably just started eating properly and training well. Like that's realistically what happened, and sleeping better. So no, anyone that says that they've got a definitive answer on any of this stuff is not using the evidence that we already have. And a lot of the time, the greatest impacts with this sort of stuff is what you tell yourself. And if you tell yourself that your period, you're going to be tired around your period, you're more likely to be tired around your period. If you tell yourself that oral contraceptive is going to make you gain weight or increase your appetite, likelihood is that's probably going to happen. So I'm not saying that like hormones are a mindset issue or anything like that, but it's about getting curious about your body and what you feel in your body as opposed to what anyone else tells you, because the research just isn't there. Okay, Becca.
Okay, so I can't remember what episodes, but I remember hearing on the podcast about the importance of variety, trying to get 30 different plant sources for gut health. I normally eat the same things most days just for ease/price of groceries. Is that something I should look into? Are there any recipe resources?
We do have some recipe resources. We do. I can make sure whoever your coach is can provide them with you. I mean, it's what, like, we talk about this often, in whether it's kind of coming from like a cost perspective, in there's no issues, well, cost and ease, let's be honest, there's no issues in eating similarly day in, day out, week on week. What I would say is check in, and are there areas that you could perhaps kind of add in some different herbs or spices to get a few more in if you need be, or kind of going, right, this week when I do the food shop, I'm going to swap out and just try some different veggies, whether they're frozen or fresh or tinned or whatever, just so that you are adding some more variety in.
Yeah, the narrative right now with certain doctors talking about gut health all the time and the importance of it is helpful in some ways. Like, yes, it is important to have a variety of plant-based foods in your diet, but a lot of the people talking about this are people who shop at Whole Foods and drink kefir for breakfast and all of these things, and that can be, it can create a bit of a dichotomy between I either drink kefir and eat at Whole Foods, or I don't focus on my health at all, and that's just not the case. Things like, something I'll do at home when I have oats every single breakfast is some days I'll have frozen blueberries, sometimes I'll have frozen blackcurrants, just a tiny little bit of variety in that. Some days will be cinnamon on there, some days will be nutmeg, little things that don't cost any difference. They don't add stress, they don't require extra preparation, it's very easy. Those types of things are really things that you can focus on without any sort of added cost or stress.
Anna. This one is on imposter syndrome. I have an interview coming up and have found out it's face-to-face and the panel are academics. I find them intimidating and sometimes less worthy. I know that I am more than capable of doing the job, but I'm arguing with the voice that is telling me that I'm not worthy.
Definitely relate to experiences like this before. Yeah, like you're going for the interview, so you've applied for it, so some part of you must feel that you're able for it, or that at least that you have something to offer and it's an opportunity that you'd like. So I mean, you could say go to therapy and look at your core beliefs, but you obviously don't have time to do like all this work within a short space of time. But that's one part. But then, if you can't really get to the deep-rooted issue fast, then it's about like, okay, how do I ground myself before the meeting and throughout the meeting so that I can actually show up and share what I have to offer. So mindfulness techniques like breathing, grounding yourself, noticing, yourself in the room and being present, and just really recognizing that they're just humans. Like, they might be academics, but they're just skin and bone like you, and the stories you're telling yourself about them judging you probably aren't 100% accurate.
We spoke about imposter syndrome on the Eat Tweet She Mentoring podcast yesterday, actually, and I kind of went a bit ham on that, because I think it's important to recognize that we all often sit with imposter syndrome, and the people that feel imposter syndrome are usually the smartest people and doing something courageous and brave. So it's actually a really good sign that you're in the right place and you're doing the right thing. So reframing it in that sense is really important. People who are dumb, sorry, that's not a very compassionate way of saying that at all. People okay, let's take an example. No, let's not give an example. That could be, people who are usually working to develop their skills, their knowledge, their experience, etc. The more you develop these things, the more likely you are to feel imposter syndrome. If you feel imposter syndrome, then congratulations, you're probably working on these things, and that's a really good thing. I know the vibe with academics though, and I used to get this really badly. If anyone could see the way that I used to present and go for job interviews and stuff when I was an academic, you would be like, this is like a completely different person. When I had my job interview for when I was a sport nutrition lecturer, there were 3 academics and I was doing a lecture on vitamin D. And I was standing at the front and I had my pointer and I was talking about it. And I was so nervous that I threw the pointer across the room and it just smashed. The battery fell out because my hands were sweating and shaking. And it was just like, it was horrible. And every presentation I gave in my PhD, awful. I went to some job interviews that were awful. And it's this, and I think there's a thing with academia where I think, and this doesn't happen so much once you're in it and you've found your voice, but you feel a little bit stifled, like you need to show up in a certain way of like, what does an academic look like? They dress in a certain way. They're quite serious. You don't feel that you can use your authentic voice truly because you're trying to fit like this kind of academic mold. And that can make you feel even more nervous, because especially if you're someone like who's got personality and you're trying to hold space for, this is me as an academic and this is me as a person, it can feel hard to marry them together. But honestly, I've got a lot of friends who are academics and they're all just the same as you are. You just, not all of them actually, some of them are like what you think they are, but most of them are not. And so going into it just thinking, like, again, like you said, they're skin and bone, but they're also great for the work on.
Where I got that, I think my mom used to always say that to me. I actually think she used to say that to me when I was nervous. They're just skin and bone, and then it's just something that's stuck in my head. I don't even know, is it an actual thing? Is it, guys?
No, I don't think so, babe. I think that's
maybe it is in Ireland, but not over here.
Okay, you know what I mean. They're just humans.
Normally it's like, imagine them naked, not like stripped of everything to their skin and bone. But you know, whatever works. But yeah, like, just sit with it, sit with your nerves, go into it, remembering like just because you don't appear like an academic, it's what you think an academic looks like, that doesn't mean that you're in the wrong place, because I do understand that additional thing.
I remember going to an interview one time. It was an interview to work in a school, but it was the principal and the vice principal, and one of them, like, I remember trying to dress prim and proper and stuff, but at the end of the interview, as he was walking out, he fixed my collar. It was like, you know, when it's like turned down and he just went like this.
Oh,
that really just defines the whole experience.
That's so appropriate.
I know, he didn't even say anything. He just went like, yeah.
I like it this way, thanks.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I got poached in the gym yesterday by a PT, and I respected him because I thought this is the way you get clients if you're an in-person PT. He came up to me on the gym floor. I was like, oh, have we met? Started a conversation and then said, oh, you know, do you want a personal trainer? And I was like, no, thank you. I am a personal trainer. And then he said, oh, okay, we should do some sessions together. And I was like, no, thank you. I like to train on my own. And then he said, oh yeah, but I'll really beast you. And I was like, no, thank you. I don't believe in training to beast yourself anymore. I actually just train for my health. And then he was like, oh, okay, well, do you have Instagram? And I was like, okay, I will say yes to this. You can have my Instagram. And then that was it. And then I was like, that is how you get clients, right? Obviously, you go and speak to them. But I kind of just thought, like, read the room. I walk into the gym and I look at the floor the whole time. I obviously know what I'm doing with my training. I'm following a very clear program. Like, I don't want to chat. And even when he came to chat to me, I only took one earphone out. Like, a good skill for a personal trainer, as you guys know, is to be able to read the room. One, to be able to approach people, but two, when someone's like, no, like, with a smile on their face, but no, like, leave me alone. Anyway, that was a fun experience in the gym here. I just felt like
I was thinking the other day, I'm like prime candidate for someone to go, because I'm just like hiding away in the corner with my couple of dumbbells, going through the same 4 exercises in 20 minutes, and then off I go.
Yeah, like, would you like a personal trainer to help you build some confidence to use the other parts?
No, thank you, I'm fine.
I have the confidence, I just don't have the want.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, this is it. This is as good as it gets for me right now.
Yeah. And I also thought, you want to see me in beast mode, I'll give you beast mode. I just don't give it in the day-to-day gym. But watch me. I'm lost. Who is it?
You. Is it?
I mean,
Is it? I feel like it is. We just went off on a bit of a tangent.
Okay. How do you manage a relationship with alcohol while trying to work on being more mindful with food? Sorry, that's the end of the question, really. I.e., how do you kind of not introduce rules around alcohol?
I think if this question's being asked, there's obviously something with your relationship with alcohol, and it's either like making it more difficult for you maybe to work on improving your relationship with food, or it's coming in the way of your habits on a day-to-day. So I suppose like relationship with alcohol, we all have one. Like you either drink, we don't drink, or we have like, it adds to our life or it takes away from our life. And if you've noticed that it's taking away from your life and it's impacting like your ability to go to where you want to go with your health goals, then yes, something to be mindful of. You've mentioned how to be more mindful of. So a lot of the time that comes down to moderation, doesn't it? Like it's the biggest thing. There's a big difference between a couple of drinks versus like binge drinking, or drinking 3 nights a week versus 1 night a week, so moderation is the big one. And also really getting honest with yourself, like, why are you drinking? Is it actually adding to your life, and are you truly enjoying it, or is it just a case of you're using it to mask or numb or avoid or manage the anxiety you're feeling as a result of, let's say, a poor relationship with your body and food? So there's a few bits to it there, but overall I think getting really honest with yourself, like, how is this working for me, and is it actually worth it for me right now? Because there's never any problem or downfalls really of taking a short break to see, okay, do I feel better? Am I more able now since the alcohol has been removed? So that might also be something to consider, a little siesta from it.
Siesta.
Was that the right
You're
word?
on fire today. I think the thing is, like, there's a confusion, I think, sometimes between restriction and choice. So you're not restricting yourself by saying, I'm choosing not to binge drink, or I'm choosing not to drink alcohol tonight. That's not restricting yourself. That's making a choice in line with your health or like what's important to you. And when you frame it as a choice, it doesn't feel restrictive. It feels empowering. That's very different from saying, I am not allowed to ever have alcohol. So when I am at my wedding, I'm not going to drink that champagne that's on the table because I'm not allowed to drink it. It's very different from saying, I'm choosing not to have 5 glasses of champagne or whatever it is. So I think in anything, whether it be alcohol, food, anything that you feel like this balance between restriction and like not having something. We see the same with people who maybe have IBS and they're like, how do I navigate this? Not eating certain foods, but I have to restrict those foods. How does that align with things like unconditional permission to eat? Well, you're choosing not to eat foods because you don't want to like have severe pain. You don't want to impact your digestion. That's just a healthful choice. So I think the framing of it's really important. But I was just thinking there when you were talking, like, how normalized was it? And I know obviously I'm older than you guys, but not like vastly older. But when I was at uni and younger, how normalized it was to be a binge drinker. Like, and I definitely was at uni. I don't know what else you would describe that as. And it wasn't even something that you would question. Whereas now I don't think that's the same with students now. I'm sure students still drink and all of that, but I don't think it's so normalized to be a binge drinker as it was for millennials. Or yeah, I definitely think it's different. It's scary.
Yeah, it's definitely still normal here, even for like my age group or older, like every age group actually. Like I notice it sometimes when, like, let's say if I'm on my own with, let's say, my partner, we'll have a couple of drinks and that's fine. But if you're with like a group, and it could be anyone, like of all like family, friends, whatever, it's like the pace of drinking, it's like they're on to the next. And especially if you're, let's say, doing rounds or something, it's very much real still here. It's just, yeah, when you look at it, it's actually crazy how normalized it is, because it has such an impact. Like people will be totally like open with the fact that it might throw them off for a week and they might have anxiety for the week, but yet they'll still go and do it again. And it's kind of like, if it wasn't alcohol, if it was anything else, you probably wouldn't do that. So why is it okay when it's alcohol? It just doesn't make sense. It's just because it's normal, I guess, or normalized.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? I mean, I do hear, this is not me stereotyping, but I do hear like Irish people love to drink, but then so do Scottish people. So I mean, so does everyone, and I'm not saying all.
Yeah,
Like, not all everyone, but like, yeah, and there, I mean, there's obviously going to be cultural associations and all of those things, and different places will normalize different things. And there's nothing, like, if you enjoy it and whatever else, fine. We're not here to judge, but again, it's kind of one of those things where also it's like you can do what you want, but also like look at the research or look at the health outcomes of these things. Like there was a study that came out earlier this year or last year that looked at even moderate consumption of alcohol intake and some of the health impacts, and kind of going against the idea that moderate alcohol intake is fine. But again, you have to then look at your life choices overall, and it's like there are lots of things we do in life that probably would lead to better physical health outcomes if we didn't do it, but you have to like also live in your life, and there's so much more to health than just physical health outcomes, although obviously that's a large part of it.
it's totally the frequency though. Like you can maybe get away with it health wise if it's every now and again, but if you're always doing that consistently, it has to impact health. But the units are pretty high as well per week.
Yeah, for women it's 14 and for men it's 21.
Yeah,
like it's a solid amount.
Yeah,
just not all at once, ideally. Becca, question.
Okay, how do people manage work stress when you're trying to minimize stress on the body? I have had a few pretty stressful weeks at work, and work is very important to me, but want to manage this without it being detrimental to the rest of the work I've done and am doing.
I think for me, speaking from someone who, like, I run multiple businesses and I care and love all of my work that I do, and technically I have 24-hour access to my work, to my clients, to all of it, and it infiltrates in my life because of things like social media, etc. Speaking as someone from that perspective, one, boundaries is so important, and two, like making sure that you're creating space outside of those things that fill you up, that you feel you can, where you can express your true feelings, your true self. You have connection, you have joy. I think it really comes down to the importance of that other stuff. And it doesn't always have to look like with other people. It can just be making sure that you have rest where you switch off from work. And I mean, really intentionally switch off. And it's not just switching off your emails, it's also switching off the thoughts in your head that go towards work. And of course, that's easier said than done. But a lot of the stress I think that can come with work, especially if you're self-employed, is thinking that there's always stuff to do. There's always going to be stuff to do, regardless of your job. If you have a busy job, your to-do list is never going to be done. And getting stressed about what's on your to-do list is adding to your stress. And if you can get to the point where you just accept, like I accept every day that I'm going to have tons to do, and I'm very grateful and I love it, and I'm certainly would never complain about it 95% of the time. I am a human being, but like if I woke up in the morning at 6:30 and thought, oh my God, I'm so stressed, I've got so much to do, before I'd even had a coffee, before I'd even gone out for a walk, whatever, that would infiltrate my time, right? But I'm very intentional in the morning of getting up, not checking my messages, especially whilst I'm over here, because I have my phone on airplane mode, and then I wake up and then I turn my phone off airplane mode and it's like bam, 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 and I'm like, but I could easily sit there as soon as I wake up, not do my meditation, look at my messages and start getting stressed straight away. But that doesn't serve me in any way. So I'm very intentional with, at this time I'll check my messages and then I'll do these things. So I think boundaries, and really, and I don't really talk about work too much with like my partner or other people. Usually sometimes I'll offload a little bit to like a friend that doesn't really care, but like just lets me offload or whatever, or I'll offload to you guys about certain things. But I think just being really intentional with your separate spaces, if that's phrased in the right way.
Yeah.
I think as well, like there will be times where maybe you are more flexible with your boundaries because work requires that, and work-life balance is a little bit off. And I guess trying to kind of weave into your day like little restorers that are going to help balance out that stress. You might not have time to go to your weekly yoga class. You might not have time to do your 20-minute meditation. But okay, can you, if we're talking like the work that we do, can we, between client updates, do a little kind of box breathing session, like just for a couple of minutes to help kind of bring our stress levels back down? I think when we say kind of like being intentional with your rest, there's often that kind of pushback in, but I don't have time because work's so busy, or I've got so much on, or whatever else that is. But it is just these little moments that, if we think of kind of ideally stress rest rhythms, it's like 90 minutes of work, of stress, and ideally you have 15-20 minutes to bring those levels back down so you can build up that capacity again. Let's be honest, for a lot of people that's not going to be realistic depending on the type of work that you do. But okay, can I find that middle ground and just do a couple of minutes, or take myself away from my laptop and sit down and have a drink without any kind of distractions, or listen to my favorite song just to switch off for a moment?
Yeah, I do that between calls. And yesterday I deliberately set up on like my call booking that I have to have 15 minutes between like one-to-one calls, podcasts and stuff slightly different regardless. So yesterday I had 50 minutes between, I think, our podcast and the EIQ live. And so I went outside, I just walked around in circles around my house. And then at 2 minutes to my live, went to get in my front door, locked. I was like, that's weird. I'll go in, they must have come out the back door. So I went to the back door, locked. And I'm like, how? These doors don't have a latch. There's no way that I could have locked myself out. And so then I was like, oh, I've just had this nice 15 minutes of chilling. And I was like, I'm going to do this live outside because I'm locked out. She's, okay, cool. Like, no stress. It's like, shockingly, she's done it again. Turns out that you can actually lock yourself out of a door that doesn't lock from the inside, just because if you're me, you're stupid enough to do that. So don't do things like that. Make sure when you're taking these little breaks that you're doing them in a sensible way and you're not adding stress to your day. Whose question is it?
Is it me?
Go for it.
Do you think it's possible to become a coach in the fitness industry without having social media?
Not if you want to work online.
Yeah.
I think no. Like you don't want to rely on social media for sure. You want to have an email list. You want to like have other methods of speaking to people. And if you're in an in-person PT, you don't need to have social media. But it helps so much. It even just helps with the clients that you have. Think about it. If your clients only get an hour a week with you, or if you're working online, they might not even have calls with you. How do you expect them to get to know you if you're not on social media, or you're not like you're not present in their lives in some way? So I think, yeah, I would no.
Yeah, I was thinking like even when I was working in a health club and the PT role was salaried, I still wanted people to know who I was and what I was about, because you might have that interaction with someone on the gym floor and they might be like, oh yeah, she seems all right, let's see what she's about. Then what? They can't do that if you're not putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And I know this person has like the best brain and so much to share. So it's like, how do you well, you can do it through email lists and stuff, but to get a bigger reach, you do need like a platform of some sort, like Instagram, TikTok, whatever. And I wonder, is it the block with social media? Is it the association with when I was struggling, this is what it used to do to me, so I want to stay away from it? But actually you can use it purely for just work and not consume anything if you don't want to. Like, yes, you're supposed to be social on it and that, but you know, you might have to just keep it boundaried for a while at least until you feel comfortable to use it. So yeah, question why it's like a no way Jose, and sees their way around doing it if it feels manageable in any way for you.
Yeah,
I would say.
And social media as a coach is very much to help other people. It's to connect with people, of course, but framing it as you're doing a post on social media with this brain that I don't know who it is, but Becky says you've got a great brain, so you've got a great brain. Not that some people don't have a great brain. Oh, maybe I don't know. Anyway,
She's got lots to share, lots of, yeah, she's great.
Okay, so then think like one post that you might put up, someone might see it and it might change completely the way they think about themselves, or completely something that they might feel really bad about themselves, and or something they've eaten or something, and you could post something and that could make their day. How incredible is that? Whenever I'm speaking to any coach that has this social media block, I just think, remind them that that post, you just need to help one person. Every post you do, is this going to help one person? Probably. So then post it. It's not about anyone else. It's not about you. It's about helping people.
Advice with mindset during injury. 6 weeks in so far with tendonitis in my wrist, and it's still stopping me from lifting weights. I'm taking regular painkillers, icing, wearing wrist supports, have been referred to the physio, keeping protein intake up, but finding it hard to know what training to do and how to motivate myself. So with this injury, any kind of like gripping, so like weighted leg movements at the moment are out. This client trains at home. Pilates and yoga is often a struggle too, if it's any positions that put weight through her wrist.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, that's exactly what's in my mind. It's like, that's really frustrating.
Yeah, I think allow yourself to be like, allow the frustration. Don't let it eat you up, because it doesn't help. And I could easily sit here, all of us could sit here and say, well, frustration is not going to get you anywhere, so just accept that this happens and just wait it out, and this is transient, and all of that is for sure true, but let's not invalidate the fact that like a constant injury, a prolonged injury, is really frustrating. I think the thing is that, like, yes, remembering that it will pass eventually, and you know, actively being, and not celebrating yourself as much as just being proud of yourself for taking the right actions here. A lot of people wouldn't take care of their body the way that you're doing it. They would just keep going. They would keep doing yoga. They would just try different things and probably prolong their recovery. So being really proud of yourself for doing that. And it's hard, but like acceptance of the fact that injuries happen with people who train and take care of their bodies with exercise. Injuries are expected and quote unquote normal to some degree is helpful. It doesn't remove the frustration, but I think acceptance of this, like, this is going to take as long as it takes, and all I can do is support my body in the way that I am doing and treating her well like I am doing. You're really doing everything you can do. So can you use the time that you would use normally for training to do something else that brings joy to your life, or brings purpose, or whatever it is that's important to you? Can you actively fill that time? So maybe you used to always go to a Thursday night yoga class, for example. Okay, well, what are you going to do at that time on a Thursday night instead? Is that going to be your time for doing your puzzle or whatever it is that you love to do? Like, can you actively add new things into your life for this period of time that will eventually change?
Mm-hmm. With this client as well, she has a really great relationship with exercise and is very much missing just how it makes her feel kind of mentally. And I think like maybe exploring different ways of moving as well, maybe bringing in some connection, so you can also have a vent as to how pissed off you are that you can't train how you prefer. I did suggest couch to 5k, and I'm really sorry that I suggested that, but you know, something new perhaps that you might not have considered until now.
I did five to couch to 5k way back when. It was actually quite good.
Yeah, I think Georgia's been doing it, hasn't she? Like to get her back into running as well. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's your answer. Couch to 5k. Sorry. Okay, last question. Do you think it's helpful to talk to others about what work I'm doing with my relationship with food and body image? Is it best to keep it to myself because of possibilities of their comments and perspectives that may not be helpful in the process, even though they might be genuine and trying to be helpful?
Depends who. Like, that's what it comes down to. If it's someone you trust, someone that you value their opinion, who you spend lots of time with and love, then yeah, definitely letting them in on what's been going on for you and how are you doing, and that could be really supportive for you to help you along. But if it's somebody that you doubt will get it, or they might respond with something that's quite triggering for you, then is that worth it? Then probably not. So it just really depends who it is. I would say.
I do think it's definitely, absolutely, like Becca said, being mindful of who you share with. But I do think sharing is so important, because so many people, when they start this process, will feel so much shame for what they're struggling with. And I mean, the Brené quote escapes me, but ultimately, like, by sharing it, you help to remove the shame. And equally, sharing it with those that you trust means that they can be mindful with kind of the comments that they make. And maybe in sharing, you can just be outright and say that this is what I'm working through. Here's what you could do to support me. But like so much we talk about, here are my boundaries as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And just say, like, yeah, exactly that. Say, I don't need you to, you know, give me your advice, and I would love it if you would just listen to the stuff I'm going through. And I think with any sort of relationship, and I don't mean romantic, I mean any relationship in general, to be able to have a discussion with someone where it's like you saying to them, like, do you want advice, or do you want me to listen? It's really helpful. And on the flip side, being able to say, like, it's not that I want advice, I would just love for you to hold space for me to kind of talk about what I'm doing. To be able to say that is really, really helpful. And then, you know, if people do slip in with advice, you can either say, oh, that's really helpful, but like I've got my advice from Rebecca, or you can again just kind of reiterate that boundary in a kind way. And I think it's good practice, because when you've healed your relationship with food, you're going to be having these conversations probably for the rest of your life, because there's always going to be people around you that have not done that work and don't want to, it's not important to them, etc. You know, I still have that conversation now with people of like, we always like laugh because someone said recently when I was here, like, oh, you've earned that food, and I was like, I don't do earning food, and this is why. And it was like, you're always going to have situations where those little things come up. So it's good practice to start having these conversations now, so you start to find your voice with it. And there's a lot to be said in terms of your own journey. If you feel comfortable and empowered to talk about it, that's only going to reignite and push you further in doing the work as you become more empowered and feel more confident in it.
Yeah, I think as well, sometimes we can presume that people kind of have a sense that something's going on, whereas they actually can think the opposite a lot of the time, especially if you're, let's say, into fitness and you have been for a while, or you're a coach, or you know, you have connections with the fitness industry or whatever. So people can then think, oh, that's a common ground we can talk about, and they can almost say things that are definitely going to be triggering without any kind of idea that you're going through something. So I know, like, I had some conversation recently where someone said they keep asking me, am I doing that run, but I'm trying to get my period back, and I'm not doing that run, but I don't want to tell them I've lost my period. So we just came to the kind of idea of just giving them an inkling that it's not something that you can do right now for health reasons, so that they'll they have an understanding that there's a reason why without having to explain yourself. So yeah, just people can't read your mind always or never, sorry. So just letting them in, letting them have some idea
Agree.
of where they're at.
Okay, thanks for the great questions. Thanks for the great analogies and metaphors, Becca. That's fantastic.
You're gonna take a bow now.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks.
Bye.